Well, again, thank you first and foremost for sacrificing whatever time that you took out of your day to be able to be here this evening to have this conversation. This is a normal practice outside of the timing. And obviously nothing's normal in this day and age, but this conversation is a normal practice for us for the past 5 years. Throughout each year, we have 3 major conversations to keep families up to date as to what's going on, how things are going, and what things are looking like as we move toward the next year. And this conversation is relatively close to that. What are we looking at toward the next year? And as much as we aren't entirely sure about what the next steps are going to be, we do know what we've been doing. And there are a lot of great things that we've been doing up until we had to shift gears and make adjustments. But it didn't necessarily impact greatly our strategy and the manner in which we are thinking about how we support students. So most of the conversation I'm having with you today is everything up till, and at the same time is talking about game planning as we look for next year. Some of the conversation will be shared with Ms. Gummerson, Ms. Smith, as well as Dr. Edwards, who has a responsibility as well that will come up in a minute. But overall, we also like to hear from you for the parents that have been that are on this particular call. In the event that there's some questions, some clarity that you may need. I was fortunate enough to receive some feedback, so I'll speak to that feedback from the survey that I received. But overall, I definitely appreciate the time and attention that you're taking this evening to have this conversation with us as we begin to have a very clear conversation about the things that have occurred and start to talk about what we're looking toward as we prepare to support your children in next year. You can go to the next slide. Our purpose, obviously, as I just mentioned not too long ago, was reflect on the successful student support strategies for the current year, things that we put in place from the year prior, reflect on academic success, and provide parents with an opportunity to share their perspectives on their students' education. Of course, this is a partnership, so that's why we have this conversation. And to adequately have the conversation, we function from a school improvement process. And the school improvement process is cyclical. It starts with identifying needs, selecting interventions, as you can see from the infographic, the plan implementation, implement the plan, examine progress, and it continues every year. And how we get parents involved in that process is we start in August talking about where we stand as we begin to move toward putting into place the things that we talked about now. And then January, we give a mid-year conversation. This January, I actually had a conversation with our students because I believe that they were being left out of the conversation. And I wanted to talk to them directly about what we plan for them because school usually happens to them. So I said, this is what we're gonna have this conversation directly with the students as well and get their feedback and input based upon the things that we said we would do for this particular school year in January when we met. And here we are talking about things since January as we move toward the next school year. And next year we'll do the same thing. You can go to the next slide, please. Last year we decided that we were gonna have a 3-year plan for our goals. We got to a place where we were able to narrow down what we were doing overall. Like what do we think were the big items that we had to focus on? And we went from, let's say, like 4 or 5 goals, probably like 5 years ago, we narrowed it down to 3. And then last year we came to the conclusion that we would have 2 goals. And those 2 goals are going to be talked about, and we'll talk about the things that we're going to work on per goal as we work toward the 2022 school year. And the first goal is talking about tier 1 strategies. We always think about what we can control. And what we can control are things that happen from day to day in the classroom and how we prepare and plan for the activities that we're going to do to support student achievement and growth. So our goal was to improve in tier 1 strategies, which is what is actually happening in classroom from day to day, to engage all students, which will hopefully increase student growth by 3%, as indicated by common assessments and the GMAS and all content areas annually. So that's the way we were looking at that measurement for student achievement and growth. And the things that we decided that we would do in terms of action steps and initiatives, here's some highlighted things that we said we would work on and function to make sure that we are systematically doing the right things to support student achievement. I'll highlight some things. Professional learning is always about building capacity with the staff members at the school. And we do that weekly. And we identified 3 areas that we thought as a school that we need to function and support so that teachers will be adequately supporting students based upon our knowledge in technology, grading, and co-teaching. And thankfully, we were above the curve as we were working on it, because as you can see, we needed to be much more stronger in the area of technology and how we support students through technological support and instruction. The other big bucket that we were looking at is how we support students beyond the school day, and that would be Saturday sessions. That was something else that was effective for us, that we thought was very helpful for student achievement, and we were very thankful to parents who provided the opportunity for students to come and take advantage of those extra help hours, and they were very beneficial for the students. It looked different, it felt different, the energy was different, and students were engaged the whole time. So it was a good thing that we restructured the way in which we were providing Saturday sessions that helped math, ELA, social studies, science, and all content areas to support student achievement throughout the year. The next two things that I'm going to highlight that as we talk about action steps and initiatives is something that we have found to be very helpful, that and also was very needed as something that we always focus on. So you go to the next slide, please. And the major initiative that I want to talk to you about right now is writing across the curriculum. There are two things that we did to support writing. I like to help parents understand that I call writing to be the math of ELA. It's reading gets a lot of attention in elementary school, and then there's an assumption that a level of writing should take place, that students are going to perform well in expression and written expression. But academic writing is completely different from any other writing. They write all the time, but what they're writing are incoherent sentences, letters that represent words, implied ideas, emojis that represent an entire phrase or statement. So we're getting farther and farther away from actual clear, coherent sentences, using language, the written language, to show tone, to show inflection, to show voice. We're losing a lot of things that used to be taught and used to be practiced in the day-to-day life, whereas now the gap is getting wider. So that's something we had to notice, that a very succinct and very strategic approach toward academic writing has to take place, and it really hits hard in middle school. It's like their first stop of saying, okay, this is how you write, and this is how you express yourself, and this is how you build your idea, and this is how it takes place, so that you are clear and concise no matter who reads it, so that you're able to express yourself. So it's a socially we're combating this this level or this gap, and in school we're seeing it getting wider and wider. And so the best way to combat that is to truly have writing across the curriculum, where we're asking students to write in every subject area and write from an academic standpoint, more than just saying the first thing comes to their mind or expressing themselves in very short phrases or fragmented sentences. And we have to teach that. So the first strategy that we've been using is a resource, which is Think Circa, which allows students to use a technology which is supported by teacher instruction. It's not an independent thing. It's a teacher instruction that supports Think Circa. And I designated a person to support that initiative, to help support teachers, to get trained, to help teachers to be supported in learning how to deliver Think Circa, to be a liaison with actual the company that supports it and maintains our ability to provide Think Circa. And Dr. Edwards utilized the support that she received from the outside to help train teachers throughout the building. And that happens in math, social studies, science, and English. And she has led the way to help support teachers with a goal of meeting a certain number of Circa sets that will help produce results. And last year, I would say to some degree, the manner in which we use Think Circa, as well as the other initiative, Title I co-teachers, and really concentrating on writing across the curriculum in a real sense, has helped us to see tremendous gains, of which we saw through the milestones particularly, but throughout the school year from local assessments, we could see how students were getting better in certain particular areas. If Dr. Edwards is here, I think that's our next slide. I'd like her to talk real briefly about what she's doing and what she did this year and some things that she noticed. I'd asked her to talk to everyone here about what the process looked like, some things that she would recommend as far as how we should move forward with things circa, and any other feedback she could provide. Hopefully she's still here, or she's here at all. If not, I'll move on. I will go through these slides. All right. From what she shared with me previously, she talked about the information that she received as of May 18th and the impact of COVID as it related to the number of circus sets that could be completed. To the right is a summary of the average lessons that were given, as well as the average writing lessons. The magic number was 10 for the year, but it was less for each particular content area and more for ELA to support the initiative of making sure that we covered X amount of circus sets. What we had this year were spring visits to support. Yes, go to the next one. Go next one. You're fine. What she conducted this year were spring visits, which the company itself comes in and brings other schools in to take a look at how Think Circle is working at other school systems and in other school settings. And we were tapped this year as well as last year to have to be observed by a team of people, which was on that first slide when I transitioned to Think Circle. And 3 of our teachers, ELA, social studies, and 2 social studies teachers were tapped to be observed during that period of time. And they gave us feedback, obviously, of what was happening in the classroom, what they saw, what they didn't see, what they liked, what they didn't like, or some questions about practices. And in most cases, I believe our responses were highly favorable with regard to what they saw, the different ways in which Think Circle was being used in the classrooms that they observed, especially as it pertained to the grade levels that were being supported as well. The biggest part that was a disconnect, I would say, this year that wasn't the greatest in terms of being able to get the right feedback is that there was an issue technically that happened in the beginning of the school year where it was not recording the number, there wasn't accurately recording what was happening, what students were doing. So it would say that, let's say the student did 10 assignments, it only picked up 1. So we didn't have the right best baseline to determine that level of growth that we would like to see within the program itself. Although we use other means to identify students, not identify, but to work with students writing, Think Circle helps to compile a certain amount of data, but it wasn't able to do what it normally does because of the technical difficulties that it was having in the beginning. And that's when we usually start with all of our, baseline assessments that help us see where students are. So if either you miss them, try to make sure they get in there so we can see where we're starting from. And because that information wasn't captured, it was really hard to determine where students were as we moved along. And go to the next slide, please. Dr. Edwards also asked teachers about the use of Think Circa, and she talked about, because the best thing we do is get feedback from staff regarding how things are going, right? And a lot of the feedback that we use to determine what our next steps are come from between the users themselves and the practitioners. So this information on this slide is highlighting the feedback that was received. And just to, highlight the feedback was that teachers explained that they generally liked the resource and felt it was beneficial to their instruction, which is a big part, because a lot of times when we identify a resource, it always sounds good when the vendor is talking about it. It's like watching a Slinky commercial and seeing how cool it was going down the steps, but then you try to do it yourself, it doesn't really work out the way. Or use a yo-yo and it's doing all types of crazy tricks, and you try to do it, it doesn't work out the same way. So in practice, I showed my age too. In practice, it's much more of a realistic idea of what's actually happening, and you're able to get in real-time feedback as to how it works for our students. So this information that teachers provide for us allows us to say, okay, we need to make adjustments from month to month, from circuit set to circuit set, and that's why this information is valuable. And overall, the comfort level for teachers, whether it be math, social studies, science, and I'm excluding English on purpose, is the reason why this is very helpful, because if a math teacher can execute a circuit set, science, social studies can execute a circuit set, then that definitely shows the ease of use, as well as the ability for teachers to to be getting better at being able to apply and use the program so that it benefits the students within their content. You can go to the next slide. Here are recommendations. I'm not going to read them all to you, but I'll look at the highlights. When we talk about adjustments from year to year, I always ask Dr. Edwards for recommendations, so it'll help me to see from her expert opinion based upon using it and talking to people on the ground floor. What do you think would be the best way to make that small adjustment? And the highlighting points of the continued user usage, plan to allow flexibility and curriculum alignment, because we set a particular number from the beginning and we didn't think from this particular experience that we would need to reduce that number based upon her recommendation. And she also mentioned utilizing Title I teachers to support sixth grade with implementation. Because of course, as I'll talk to you in a minute about Title I teachers, sixth grade is hit the ground running with academic writing. So that's the best place where everyone is all hands on deck to help students to be able to become much more comfortable with resources that support their writing and be able to have more than one opportunity of people to work with them to be able to solidify that foundation for them. We had one Think Circa leader, which is Dr. Edwards. She recommended that we use one per grade level, which would be spreading the wealth and also getting a point of contact per each grade level versus one person dealing with the entire building. So if she's out of pocket, she's not here, she's sick, she's whatever, then we're not at a loss for communication or connection with the company, or that grade level is not in a place where they got to wait on one person to get help or assistance. All right. You can go to the next slide. Which is a segue to Title I co-teachers. I think last year was the first year that we were fortunate enough to get teachers that would support writing. We hired them specifically to help with the initiative of Think Circa and also to work, the resource of Think Circa through the initiative of writing across the curriculum. So we had about 5 teachers spread out between 6th grade and 7th grade that supported writing in all major content areas. This year, we were fortunate enough to have 4 out of the 5 return. And I split up the expectation based upon the needs from the data that we received about overall student needs. So what we did this year, which was different from last year, is we had content-based teachers. So each teacher was in a content versus just helping all students or helping a targeted group of students with their writing. So there was a teacher who taught science or supported science classes day in and day out. On the days that that particular teacher worked, social studies the same, ELA the same. And so we also had 2 math teachers based upon the data to support math fluency and numbers and the number system and problem solving. But they also just worked with math content and supported teachers in that way. And if they needed to support a teacher during Think Circa, they could, because the year before they worked already with all teachers doing writing. So in math, in the math setting, when Think Circa came up for writing, they were able to support writing as well. So this year they were more concentrated in content areas and supported students in that particular way. And I got feedback from them as well. So you can go to the next slide. For math, prior to this, it was up into March, I want to say March 3rd was the last time they pulled some data, but they saw growth in fact fluency over time. They also noticed that students still struggled with engagement. Once virtual learning went into play, they struggled with engagement of using a resource called Extra Math, which enabled them to build up their number fluency. What they shared with me was a lot of students did have huge gaps in just multiplication facts. And if you don't have the basics with math, it builds upon itself, so that if you're missing a piece at the ground floor, then you're definitely going to have a hard time as you continue to build upon it. So we were talking about ways in which we could support students in math outside of the things that they noticed up until this point. But overall, they did see a progression as they were walking out the door in terms of going into virtual learning, and then plan, the way in which they supported students in a virtual setting changed entirely from the way in which they were supporting students in a regular traditional setting. For writing, the other three teachers supported students in those content areas that I mentioned to you. They noticed that students struggled, students with greater needs struggled with engagement, meaning although you had an issue, the manner in which, the degree by which you had an issue, the more likely you were to fight the support or fight the help. So the motivation was pretty low, and students weren't excited about acknowledging that they don't know. And we had a very good conversation about the fact that when it comes to math, students are, I don't know math, I don't know this. And it's no shame in not knowing math. But in writing, there's a shame in not knowing how to comprehend. There's a shame in not knowing how to write clearly. So to be told critically that you need help or that you don't make sense or you're not clear. Just think about in conversation, if someone's like, I don't know what you're talking about, you're offended because it's like, the words I used, I thought were clear. I think I'm making sense. In writing, that same level of need to be clear is important as speaking, but is a difference and is a manner in which you go about it. And so as students lack that ability and that foundation, the greater the struggle, the more that they had resistance and motivation and would shut down. So they, even with the students that we targeted, that we thought were on the bubble, to be able to be with that support, we push forward. The extra support in some cases made the students withdraw more than look for that support. What they did find overall was growth in supporting claim and evidence and reasoning. And these are all skills that we look at as students are writing to identify their achievement and how well they're able to explain themselves. It's always about citing evidence. It's not about what you know, it's how you can prove it and how you use the text to support your ideas. So a lot of times it's formulaic initially in creating that foundation, and then building from that foundation. If they don't need it, then they could begin to just expand from that foundation. But they're pretty much drilling in the foundation of the ACEs strategy, which is a formulaic way in which you build your essay, and then help them from there to get comfortable with that foundation. And then as they get more mature in their writing, they're able to do more and branch out from that. And so that's primarily the things that they're working with them. The suggestion also was that a concern or a notice that they recognized was that there were gaps in background and vocabulary, whether it be background for the structure of writing or vocabulary to express the things that they want to say. And it was shared with me that it would be important during literacy periods to build vocabulary for students and help to give them the language to be able to express themselves. So we'll go to the next slide. Okay. The second major initiative that we were working toward is literacy. The manner in which we support student needs is in a period called literacy. And from the feedback that I received from those who shared their responses in the survey, it was a little bit, it was kind of up and down with regard to whether they understood the importance, parents understood the importance of literacy or what literacy is. So I definitely want to take the liberty and talk a little bit about what actually happens and what we plan to do in a literacy period that supports students. There's two sides to it. We look at a stretch and we look at a build, right? The stretch is for students who have a strength in a particular area or are literate in high Lexile levels, are literate in a particular area or content, because you could be illiterate in one content and very literate in another. And literacy has to do with not only just reading, it's writing, communicating, critical thinking, right? And so we use a literacy period to support both ends. I always tell parents and tell faculty members that are coming on board to Bennett Mill that we have a gift and a curse with regard to our population. We have a very diverse group of students. And because they're very diverse, we have a lot of very diverse needs, a group of needs for our students. And because of that, there's no group of kids that we can ignore. Not that we want to, but because of that, there's a lot of things that we have to do to make sure that we're supporting the students that are in our building. And the literacy period is one way in which we do provide that support. And it is it is built based upon, from the initial standpoint, is their Lexile scores, as well as other areas of their local assessments that says the student has the knowledge to or needs support to. And the ways in which we've been supporting the stretch side of it, meaning they have a strong foundation and we're pushing them to be creative, we're pushing them to be critical thinkers, we're pushing them to be more analytical, is through science. So you'll have either science fair, and now we've added Project Lead the Way, which provides that critical thinking frame of mind as they approach problems. And that's to be literate in that sense. Social Studies Fair also is research-based. National History Day is also research-based. So they look for problems, look for issues, do the research, use information from that research to make a statement or to make a claim about what's going on in the world or about a specific issue or concern, and then express that in written form as well as oral, oral form, and be able to present that. And those are other higher level ways in which they support, in which we are stretching students. ELA, we have higher literacy classes, and those classes, they're not being remediated, they're not being supported, they're ways in which that they're being pushed using English language arts. The other side to that is the build side. So there's courses that students are right in the gap. They don't necessarily, they have struggles in comprehension and reading. It's not that they are, there's levels to their comprehension. If they fall within a particular gap, we support reading. And so that class is a reading remediation class where we provide them with a software as well as other skill sets that will help them to be able to build a vocabulary, help them to be able to be more fluent, help them be able to comprehend rather than just decode, and then apply what they understand and write it and express themselves in a way that they're able to grow from 1 week to the next and from 1 month to the next, so that they no longer need that support. So it's a class that is built to not be there to be a crutch forever. It's for them to grow in that particular area and then move out after 8 to 18 weeks or what have you. The biggest problem that we always find with students that are placed in the reading class is the fact that one of the major factors that puts them there is taking the Lexile SRI, which is the reading inventory that gives us a score as how students perform. And their attitude is what directly impacts the score that they receive. It's like they don't feel like taking this test, they're going to score as if they were in the second grade. And it's like, how does this person score second grade and they're all these other great classes? But it's their attitude that directly impacts that score. So we always have to have a pep talk with them, like, listen, when you take this test, you take this assessment, you have to take it seriously so we can really see where you are. And every time you take it, you have to take it seriously. Because if you don't, then we're thinking you're regressing, we're thinking you really don't know, and it's really just about your attitude. The items in red are items that are highlighted because of what we're looking to do for next year. For ELA, we're looking to make the stretch side of it more project-based learning, which would also mirror a lot of the great opportunities and activities that happen in Social Studies Fair, but it'll be more specific to English language arts and being able to critically think about the world and what's going on in it and try to address it through written oral expression. There's going to be a writing class, a writing literacy class that will support writers, support writing, academic writing, as I just mentioned to you. That will be one teacher that designated to support writing in classes outside or on top of the co-teachers that are working with 6th and 7th grade. Oh, Dami 6th grade, excuse me. In 7th grade, this writing teacher will be able to support students. And then lastly, we're looking at math for building also, which is to identify students that would need more help in problem solving and fluency and provide a space for them to be able to be remediated and supported in that particular space. All right, we'll go to the next slide. All right. In literacy, there's three teachers designated to support the remediation side per grade level. And those teachers are also supported by our response to intervention specialist, Ms. Roundtree, who they look at student scores, their progress monitor to see where they are, because it's a tier 2 intervention. intervention and to see how we could support students to make sure that they're growing versus regressing. And we had a conversation in terms of what was going on in those classes to figure out how we could best support students. Because it's one thing to have a support and it's another thing for it to be effective. So we try not just to have things to say we have them. We have them to say, okay, what more can we investigate as to how effective they are so that we know what the next step is going to be. So the consideration that they shared with me was the reduction of class sizes to best support varied needs. Because the more complex the needs are of students, then this class sizes should be a little bit smaller as you're able to best support those needs, right? We try to have a heterogeneous classroom, but for the most part, when we talk about remediation, it should be a lot more prescriptive as we support the specific needs of that student. So the question, the ask was, and consideration was, and versus this number of students, can we look at this number of students and we think would be better equipped to support the varying needs? Not that they can't support student needs, but it would be better suited for the needs that they have experienced from them practicing what they've been doing this past year and the year prior as to how they could best support students. The other thing was a consistency of a co-teaching model. In some cases, literacy classes have someone to come in class and kind of divide and conquer, but it may not be every day as they believe that it would be best in certain circumstances. So that was something else that they had mentioned would be a very supportive in the things that they're doing. The other thing was address math remediation needs, and that's what made me lean more toward how else we could support them through literacy. And again, math literacy is about being literate in math. There's words that mean something else in math because of the way in which it functions. There's words in science that mean something different because of the way in which it functions versus it being social studies or English. So the math remediation literacy needs have to do with problem solving and again, in math fluency in terms of the number system. And then last but not least, that the consideration of providing project-based learning in ELA, something that feels different than just going to do more reading and writing, something that feels more inventive, more innovative, and something that's going to be as appealing as Project Lead the Way is, as appealing as Social Studies Fair and National History Day is for our students in ELA, because that's a strength. All right, so at this point, I want to provide an opportunity for feedback or questions pertaining to the information that I shared so far. I know I said a lot, and I pretty much threw up on all you guys about all the information that's going on out there, but I definitely wanted to pose the other question more specifically about literacy. Were there any questions that you still had regarding literacy? And we'll be able to have that conversation very briefly, or any other period of information that I share with you regarding writing and writing across the curriculum, Think Circa, or Title I co-teachers. Or if you have a question, you can put it in the chat if you don't want to say it. I'm off the hook? Good, I'm off the hook. I'm gonna go to the next slide. I'll go to the next slide. All right, for goal number 2 is culture and climate. We really focus on culture and climate because I always say that's what gives us whatever reputation that we have. What we can control in the building is what we do to make sure that our students are safe and supported, our faculty is safe and supported, and what energy we provide for students so we're able to help guide them in a very tumultuous time in their lives. So our second goal that we created was written here and talking about increasing positive school culture, specific focus on the reduction of student discipline referrals by 10% as measured by the district annual referral report. So every year we look at numbers from month to month, and we also have put in place a plan that we believe would build our culture for what we expect students to do, expect students to behave, and also how we govern ourselves as professionals so that we model the expectations for students. So to talk briefly about what that looks like and how that shakes out here at Bennett's Mill, I asked Ms. Smith, who is our guru of culture and climate, to talk with us a little bit about the things that we've been putting in place, as well as discipline and what that looked like up until the time that we left.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me clearly? Okay. Okay, hopefully parents that are on with us today know that Fayette County is a PBIS county. So all schools have a PBIS, go by a PBIS framework. And that's just a proactive framework where we teach students expectations and we reteach when they are not following the expectations. We also model the behavior that we expect. We reward positive behavior. When students first arrive at the school, we have a matrix of expectations that we review with students, and just so that they will know what behaviors are expected in different areas of the building. We do have a PBIS team, which is made up of an administrator, which is myself, a behavior specialist, Ms. Brown, who is also our PBIS coach, one counselor. It is also composed of teachers, also parents. And those parents happen to be in our building. Ms. Holt is on the team, as well as Ms. Bing. She's another parent in the building. And we do meet monthly where we review the data. We review behavior data and determine what type of lessons we need to teach to the students based on the data that we collect. During the first week of school, just to let you know what we do to, as far as PBIS and to get everyone on the same page. We have created discipline videos that explain the expectations, and we show those the first week of school. And we also, administrators hold grade level meetings where we introduce ourselves and the counselors as well as our SRO. And we talk about major behaviors. We talk about bullying, sexual harassment, and just other expectations that we like students to follow. And we also review the Fayette County Board of Education Code of Conduct. Teachers have a list of items where we go through the book and they talk about behaviors and give students an opportunity to ask any questions that they may have. We do have a leveling system where students, when they don't follow expectations, we give them 3 opportunities, to make mistakes. However, at the third level, they are referred to the office. And our teachers do a great job of contacting parents in the event that students are not meeting expectations. And most of the times, the initial communication is by phone call, and then teachers may eventually email parents. During the second semester, students start with a clean slate. And so, those students who have reached 3 or more levels during the first semester, at second semester, they start over with a clean slate. We hold discipline meetings again by grade level to just reiterate expectations and talk about any problem areas, problem behaviors that we are seeing. And so we do hold those meetings second semester as well. We have PBIS lessons that we teach the students. For example, before we have an assembly, we have a lesson so that students will know what the behavior expectations are. We have PBIS safety lessons. So prior to a fire drill, we have a PBIS lesson on how to behave and what the expectations are during the fire drill. Teachers also teach PBIS lessons during our instructional breaks on Wednesday, and that is based on data as well. And they also teach lessons as needed. New students to our school are able to view discipline videos during the new student orientation. You can go to the next slide. I would like to give you all just a few moments to just review the data that I have here. I have the data from this year, last year, as well as the year before. And so I just went up through February, since unfortunately we did not finish school during the month of March. So I'll just give you all a few minutes to take a look at those numbers. Okay, and unfortunately, we would not have met our goal for this year. As you can see, our numbers increased from last year. Looking at months For example, September, we doubled the numbers there. We also doubled our numbers in November, more than doubled the numbers in January, as well as February. And from August to February last year, we had a total of 290. These are the total number of referrals, 290 referrals. And this year we were already at 504 by the month of February. And you may go to the next slide. And I would just like to talk about some reasons why I believe the numbers may have increased. In 2018-19, we did not give consequences for students being tardy. And first period, there are several students in our school that have math and science and other classes, other important major classes first period. Our 8th graders have connections, so our 6th and 7th graders have academic classes. So it is very important that students arrive on time to class. And this year we began to give consequences for students arriving tardy to first period as well as arriving tardy to school. So you will see tardies this year were up to 44 for first period and 32 for school. The difference there is that when students are tardy to first period, that means they have arrived, they've arrived to school. So for example, they may have arrived from the bus, but they cannot find their way to class on time. Tardy to school means that they have checked in at the front office by a parent. Also this year, we changed the cell phone policy. In 2018-2019, students were required to keep their phones in their lockers. And this year we decided to, relax the policy and allow students to keep their phones on their person. However, they were not supposed to have those phones out in the classroom or in the hallway. And so we do have, we have an increase in referrals for cell phone violations. And so it was causing such disruptions that we decided at second semester in 2020 to go back to the expectation that we had in 2018 and 2019, where students were required to keep those cell phones in their locker. We just saw that they just were not responsible enough. When they had the cell phone on their person, they felt the need to, to use it, unfortunately. Also, violating the team behavior plan. This is when we give the students, they have an opportunity to earn 3 levels before receiving an office referral. And so after that 3rd level, at the 4th, 5th, and 6th level, when they come to the office, we code that as violation of the team behavior plan. And so that increased from 38 last year to 68 this year. We have seen an increase in academic dishonesty, and this goes along with the Chromebook. Students have just found ways to, just not be honest, looking at cell phones to get answers and things of that nature. So we have seen an increase in academic dishonesty this year. Fighting has also increased at the school. And I would say that as far as fighting, we do have a high transient population. And several of the fights that occurred in the school were from kids who did not, attend Fayette through elementary to middle school. Also, several of the fights are, I would say, were initiated based on something that happened on social media. And so social media is something that, comes into the school and causes problems. So students may have a conflict and maybe communicating on social media over the weekend, and then on Monday they come to school and have disagreements, and unfortunately those disagreements may lead to a fight and or physical aggression. Physical aggression was down from 40 to 33. At the bottom here, I just gave you total numbers, and so for this year, 6th grade had a total of 144 referrals, 7th grade 228, and 8th grade 314. And I want to point out here that last year, 7th grade had the highest total number of referrals. And this year, that was also our 8th grade class, which also had the total highest number of referrals. And just wanted to give you that data there. And I believe that may be my last slide.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
I just want to make one point based upon something you mentioned about the fighting in the transient population.
Yes.
The reason I want to clarify the statement because I want parents to understand why that matters. In other systems, the way in which schools may respond to fighting and respond to differences are completely different. So the norms of how students respond violently in some of the schools that they come from is usually the norm. So as opposed to just disagreeing or just not doing what most students in Fayette County have been kind of raised to do, so to speak, they've come from places where fighting is the first reaction versus it being any other conversation about it. So in a lot of ways, we go through a learning curve, and it usually happens within the first month of that student coming to school. This is a new kid. He comes from wherever he comes from, or she comes from wherever she comes from. People are talking about them and making rumors about where they came from, or what gang they're in, or what person they know or they don't know. And it's about fitting in and trying to figure out your space. And the minute that is easy a month in, then they erupt in a response to what they're used to. And I would say 90% or 95% of the cases this year has been all students that have come from somewhere else. That in one case we had like a week, and it was just about the manner in which they just were used to responding to behaviors. Because even in talking to parents, based upon to give them the consequences, a lot of places they don't even suspend them. They'll just let them go back to class. So it's not a real consequence for them to have a fight. It's no detriment to their academics, because they'll have a fight first period and go back to class third period. So those are just some things that I wanted to highlight based upon the point of being transient population, why that matters, because it's just, they've been ingrained in certain rules and expectations that are just so different from ours that by the time we're able to really even watch a video, it doesn't matter, but they get caught up in that transition and change, and it takes them some time to come out of what they don't have to do anymore.
Okay, Dr. B, did you want me to do the action steps? Yes, okay. Okay, just action steps and initiatives that we promote at Bennett's Mill. We do hold monthly grade level meetings to review data from the PBIS team. So on our PBIS team, we have a teacher from every grade level, and so that teacher during the grade level meetings report whatever is discussed during the PBIS meeting with their grade level teachers. We also have an instructional break. Instructional break is an opportunity, it's kind of like a brain break for students. And so students, for about 10 minutes during the day, students are able to just socialize. They're not able to have technology. Some students decide to go outside. Some may go just into a quiet room and read and things of that nature. But on Wednesdays, those are our PBIS Wednesdays, where we teach those lessons based on the data that we are receiving. We also have 9-week no-level celebrations per grade level. So these are, we reward the students who did not receive any levels during the 9-week period. And each grade level determines how they will celebrate those students. And it's something very simple, such as, possibly just buying ice cream for those students. They may go outside during lunchtime and after they eat, and we provide ice cream, and this is funded by the PBIS team. An increase of student-driven focus clubs and organizations. We have several opportunities after school for students to be involved and engaged in school outside of academics. We also have guidance lessons provided by our counselors. that are focused on the data as well. They have girl groups as well as boy groups where they talk about certain behaviors and things of that nature. We also have school-wide celebrations such as Veterans Day, Hispanic Heritage celebrations, Black History Month, Women's History, as well as Multicultural Nights. We have PTO Spirit Nights. And as for our teachers, every month during the faculty meeting, we recognize 3 teachers. We recognize teachers for being engaged, empowered, and ethical, and we do that monthly. And we also started Teacher Bronco Bucks. That is how we reward our students. And so we decided that we needed to reward our teachers the same way so that administrators can model what we would like our teachers to do. And so we reward teachers for doing various things, such as maybe attending athletic events and things of that nature. So those are just a few action steps and initiatives that we promote in Bennett's New.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. The next
Yes.
slide. Based upon the survey that I sent out, there were areas that related to positive school culture and climate, more particularly pertaining to how we communicate as well as Bronco Bucks. And from the respondents, I wanted to share out with you on what the results were. And it said on average that the Bronco Bucks are effective to reinforcing positive behaviors and expectations. However, the one concern that existed was the fact that they're not being given out as much from teachers. The second question that stood out that I wanted to share out with you guys had a lot to do with communicating policy expectations with parents to provide input. The survey is one way in which we provide parents the opportunity to have input, and we'll look to do that more often. And the suggestion that did come out of that was that more communication would have been needed for parent resources, and that the parent liaison and their resources should be highlighted in some way at every event at the school, which is most certainly something that Ms. Holt tries to do her best to do in most cases if she can be present to be able to provide that information, as well as she has a website for the school. There are other ways and means of which she has a calendar of events that are posted throughout the school year that supports the things that she will do and how she will support students. And also, we could always look for ways for improvement with regard to how we communicate information out. I know that during our breakfasts, whether it be parents, moms, dads, unfortunately moms didn't get down this year, but those were opportunities where a parent liaison, Ms. Holt, will come out and address everyone and speak to that, and she's definitely instrumental in PTO as well. The last thing is the respondents believe that the parent workshops and family engagement opportunities outside of school hours do address student needs and communicates best practices at our grade level and content specific, meaning the things that are being done are useful and helpful. So I thought that was very good to note, because there's a lot of ideas that Ms. Holt has, a lot of cool things that she's trying to do to support students as well as support parents, because the major aspect of what we do in education runs up against not knowing. And I found that the more we can educate parents about what school really looks like and the things that we're doing, such as having this conversation, the better off we'll be, and understanding what the expectations really are and what that looks like. Because oftentimes we tend to react to school versus be proactive to school. And of course, we all have things going on in our lives. But if I feel as though if we don't provide the opportunity for there at least to be access to information that you should have, then that's our disservice. Not just to assume that parents don't care and don't want to know. I know you guys are very engaged, but you're working parents and you're hardworking parents at all different hours of day and night. So those of you who are here because you just had the opportunity as well as you are engaged. And those who aren't, doesn't mean that they're not engaged. It means that they just may not have the opportunity. There's other things going on that does not allow them to be here. So we recognize that, and we like to get as much feedback as possible so that we're able to be flexible in how we communicate, when we communicate, and the things that would make sense for parents, not necessarily at large, but maybe for a particular group of parents. We also recognize that we have a lot of guardianship that takes place. So maybe there's information that we need to provide to our grandparents who are taking care of our kids. There may be some information that we need to provide for single moms that are taking care of kids. Of course, We have mentorship programs. RISE is a new program that Miss Davis, a new teacher, Miss Davis, she's put together, as well as she has a support, outside support group that helps execute that, and as well as teachers in the building that help support that. Miss Kerber, another colleague, I forget what the other part, I think another sixth grade teacher will come in from time to time, depending on the needs. So there's a male mentorship group with regard to that. As was mentioned on the previous slide, there are small group supports through guidance, school counseling, who they have groups of students who are on their radar based upon specific needs, whether it be based upon loss. They have conversations with them in terms of groups of all who've experienced that loss, and teachers who support that as well, and have great conversation as a vehicle to vent. And then there's other activities that we like to be involved in to make sure that students are connected and engaged. So you can go to the next slide. So with everything that I just mentioned, everything that Ms. Smith mentioned as well, I believe that this particular side of what we do and how we do it is always open for feedback. Not necessarily, it doesn't have to be, we will never consider it to be negative, as long as we have an ear and we hear people who can share out some concerns that they may have. Then we're more than willing, as you can see, to be able to make adjustments as we need them to be made. In some cases, there's some things that you may request of us that we are doing, but you just don't know it. And so maybe we need to do better about communicating that need. So based upon the discipline information we shared out to you, based upon the systemic way in which we approach how we try to build culture and what we do to support students throughout the building, the manner in which we provide support for our staff members. Is there any question that you have at this point regarding, or suggestion that you have regarding what we're doing and how we're doing it overall with regard to positive school culture and climate? And I'm more than willing to hear. I'm going to check the chat as well to see if there are any other questions. I saw a question earlier that said, is mentoring taking place with the kids? Yes. Is there an opportunity to increase this for next year? Absolutely. The biggest problem I have, I'm not going to say problem, the biggest concern that I have with mentorship and outside mentorship groups is follow through. I sit down with every mentorship group, and I sit down with anyone who wants to mentor, even if it's a staff member in the building, and I ask them about, how does this program that you're trying to incorporate in the school going to exist beyond you? That's my first question. If you were to leave the building next year, how are the students that are part of that program going to deal with your absence? What succession plan do you have in place? Because when we talk about mentorship, we talk about supporting students, it's a relationship we're building. And the relationship is heavily relied upon by the individual who's initiating it. So if I'm initiating a mentorship program, a lot of it will come from how people feel about me personally and whether or not they want their kids around me, right? So that's the first hurdle. So if they trust, think about when you put your children in daycare. If you did have the opportunity to put your children in daycare, you chose daycare outside of cleanliness and safety based upon the person that you thought was going to serve your kid in that room. And it kind of pains you if, when you were time to sign up and drop your child off that first day, and the person that you met that you liked no longer worked there, you're like, ugh, like, I'm only here because of this Miss Johnson. And now Miss Johnson is gone. And now I don't know what I'm going to do. Now I feel some kind of way. So I'm be checking my kid upside down to make sure she's all right every day, or he's all right every day, because I came from Miss Johnson. Same thing with mentorship. If I talk to you about mentorship, you are going to be comfortable with what I told you and what I'm doing for your child. Because, like, you know what? I trust Dr. Broadhead with my child. And if you turn around and I have nothing to do with it besides a spiel, then you're like, I don't know how I feel about it, because I sold you on it, right? So when it comes to mentorship, I ask whomever it is to go through a lot of hurdles before we even start, because I know that children's lives in the balance. How their mental well-being is in the balance, and everyone involved needs to trust the process and trust the people who are involved in that process. So yes, in any way that we can increase it, perfect. But it has to meet a need, and it has to stand the test of, longevity, so to speak. Any other questions based upon the things that we shared out?
Dr. B, I have one. I have two. A parent asked, has the idea of having a monthly or even weekly celebrations until the numbers begin to decrease, have we considered that? And we usually only have the 9-week celebrations because it does take some planning on the teacher's part. And also there is a funding issue. At the beginning of the school year, we do charge a $20 student fee. $5 goes toward the rental of the locker, $5 goes toward the clinic. We have $5 to go toward technology, and the other $5 is donated to PBIS. And so these are the only funds that we have to work with. And we do have a pretty big end of the year school-wide celebration to celebrate students who were E3 during the school year. So that is part of the reason why we only hold a 9-week celebration, but we certainly can consider celebrating students on a smaller scale a little bit more often. The second question that I have, has data been broken down to see when, where, under what teacher the referrals are being written? That is a really good question. When the PBIS team meets, we have a system that's called Swiss, and that system breaks down data based on the location of where the referrals are taking place, the time of day, the day of the week, as well as the teacher. Now, we don't talk about which teacher submits the referrals during that open meeting, but administrators do have access to that information. And if we do see that a certain teacher has a high number of referrals compared to other teachers, so we do have conversations with that teacher, or we may recommend that they go to classroom management, professional learnings, and things of that nature. Okay, and that's all that I have. Any other questions?
I looked in the chat. I didn't see any of those questions. Are they?
That was sent to me privately.
Oh, okay. I'm like, where? I'm like, what's wrong with this? What's going on? Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we'll go to the next slide, which is pretty much we're at the end. In as much as we've faced a lot of challenges this year, we do definitely have a reason to celebrate. And I say that we have a reason to celebrate because it's not by accident that we've received student achievement and growth in the manner that we did for the year prior. Everything that we're doing tonight, the things that we've done the year prior and the year before that, has all been an evolution of making sense out of what education looks like and how best to serve the needs for our students. So I like to say that we no longer function from a place of, well, we had a good group of kids there, we had a bad group of kids here, we had a good group. So depending on the good group of kids or the bad group of kids, what our scores look like or what our culture and climate looks like. Based upon the structures that we put in place, that's what determines what the outcomes may be. And the degree by which those outcomes present themselves has a lot to do with how well we adjust and some serious questions we have to ask ourselves about how to support students overall. What I love about this team and the staff, that when we talk about what we have to do, we really are honest with each other about the things that we're facing. And we're always up for the challenge of figuring out how to best support our students. We have definitely dismissed the idea that it's just not our problem and the parents need to. We don't even have that conversation. What we talk about is what we control from day in and day out. This conversation is what I hope to have happen more often, of course, because we can't do what we do by ourselves. As you witnessed in the last 2 months or so, how important it is for us all to be on the same page, how well we communicate, how well we talk with each other about the things that we need, how we are having a stronger relationship for the best and the most important thing is, which is our kids, is what's important. And what got us to this point is getting closer each and every time, every year, with hitting the mark on how we support our students and the synergy of our relationship. As I showed you that circle before, it's about all of the pieces coming together to support our student and knowing what our roles are. We can't be everything for your children, and you can't be everything for your children either. You're an advocate for your child in the way in which you need to be, and we're an advocate for your child in the way in which we need to be also. And there's also another component of the business side, which comes in to support students as well. And between the three of us, we should truly be the village that helps the child. I don't like the cliche, I like the reality of it. So we're working closer and closer to the reality of it. And the more that we could have the right dialogue and the most objective understanding of what our roles are, the better off we'll be. There's challenges. You can go to the next slide. There's the challenges that we face next year are challenges that we honestly face every year. It's just not in our, it just hasn't been in our face like it's in our face now. Every year we have a challenge of figuring out how to best support our children, how to keep them safe, and how to make sure that no matter what the circumstances that they have at home, that we're able to support them and love them anyway, and figure that thing out. Communicate with parents and try to determine the best way to support each and every child that comes through our door. We are a public school. We don't get to say, just send me your best and keep the rest at home. We support every student that walks through that door. We have to. The uncertainty about the years moving forward, I believe, is an opportunity for us to really work together in the way in which it was intended. You can go to the next slide. We talk a lot about the manner in which each of us have a responsibility for our children, but the how is the part that we need to work most on. When we send out our parent compacts and talk about our goals for our children, do we really take those seriously? When we look at our lesson plans and we talk about outcomes for students, do we really take those seriously? When we talk about what students really need, how well do we take that seriously and see it through so that everyone has the part that they need so that we can best support our children? This picture right here represents that cyclical commitment that we all have to support our children. And I say that time and time again, it's our children. It is our investment. And the more we have clarity on what each one of us have to do, the better it is for our children, because our child is a part of that process. It's not just parent, teacher, and businesses. It's parent, teacher, student. The student needs to care as much as we care. I always tell students, no one starts to help you out until you show that you are willing to do a little bit for yourself. We all have to figure out what that part is for us. And these conversations help us to best clarify that. Our school improvement plan is broken down in the way that our action steps, and we just showed you a snapshot of our action steps, but our action steps are broken down so that everybody in this building has a part in it. So there's a teacher, just a teacher part of it. This is what your roles are, your action steps are, and this is what you focus on. And your head is down, and you're just staring at that thing. The parent liaison, head down, staring at that thing. This is what I have to do. These are my action steps. This is the role that I have to execute. And then there is counselors, what their role is. Then there's custodians, what their role is. Then administration, what their role is. And then there's other leaders and what their roles are. And so that way we can all focus on our part, like own our part. We all take ownership to our part and then live up to what we're required and asked to do. Then we collectively can do what's necessary for our children, and our children will benefit. But if everyone is trying to do a little bit of things that have nothing to do with us, then that's when things become a little chaotic and we're not really working or operating at the maximum level we can because we're not focusing in and dialing in our part. I know that whatever we are going to face isn't something that we can't overcome. I know that virtual learning in itself, because the manner in which it was executed very quickly, it definitely had hiccups. You know, you do anything in 3 days, go full stream. No one works that way. None of us do. We never just jump up and just go right ahead with something with a plan just as we're making it work. So I expected there to be problems. And I heard a lot of your feedback regarding to those concerns and those problems. And we're going to continue to work on those things because virtual learning is not going to go away. We have to figure out how to best support students using technology. And this particular situation provided the best clarity about what would work better than what we thought was working. And that's why I like what happened, because it showed us the possibilities within the problems. And the more we identify the possibilities, the better off we're going to be versus just looking at all the problems. So I heard a lot of your concerns from all the feedback that I've received because it boils down to communication. It just really does. How well we're communicating, how clear we are with our communication and our expectations, and what the ultimate standards look like. The only difference between this particular situation and situations in the past is that when we talked about grace and we talked about what we're doing right now, we had to be very empathetic and realistic with the realities of the things that are happening in people's homes that we can't control. At school, we can control some things. We control a lot of things at school because once we're there, but we can't control your homes and we don't expect to. But that's why we need your part. And the more that you understand your part, the more you'll feel like you're not teaching children at home and stuff like that. That's that give and take, and that's that support that we have to do. So I'm really open and hopeful for what's going to happen. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. So unfortunately, for those of you here ready for me to tell you what's going to happen, I don't know. But I do know that we're working on it. I do know that I'll be sitting in a meeting with a lot of intelligent people at the county level throughout the summer, starting on Thursday. And we're looking at all the information that we have to say, okay, how do we best support students, whether or not they're still affected, whether or not they're experiencing trauma from this, whether or not they are going to come to school, or whether they're all going to come to school. How are we going to support students that have had problems that we've always been aware of prior to this? How are we going to continue to support them? And how are we going to put things in place so that in the event that things get exacerbated, that we're able to do what we can do on our end to support them as far as education is concerned. We always need your help, and we're always looking for your advice and your guidance. So do not feel in any particular way that you are bothering me or bothering us as a school when you're questioning us or asking us for your guidance, because that's the conversations that we need to have, whether we like them or not. So I really and truthfully appreciate all of your time, all of your attention, and the fact that you trust us with your children and have not run away from us, because we do whatever we can for your children every day that we can. So I really appreciate your time, your effort, and your attention, especially now. So I hope all of you are experiencing better days and that you are looking forward to whatever tomorrow brings for you, because that's all we have now is health and recognizing how important that is. So I definitely wish you well. And if there's not any other questions or concerns, then I thank you all for your time. And I thank everyone who came on this call to support this presentation, as well as everyone on the call who came to listen. So I will be posting this recording so that it'll be on the website and that you can listen to it to your heart's content. You know, we're gonna go viral, make this thing go viral. 20,000 hits on Improvement Planning Team meeting goes viral. Yeah. So, but anyone who couldn't listen, it'll be available to them, and so that you could hear about what we're doing, where we are, and the things that we're considering doing for next year. And as we find out new information, of course, the county would provide that direction for us as a system, and what that looks like for the school is what I'll communicate to families as well. So I'm going to check this chat real quick. All right. Thank you, Dr. Powell. I appreciate your presence and all who attended. Thank you and good night.